All right, so picture this. It's a Tuesday night. You're sitting in a saloon, minding your own business, nursing a warm whiskey that tastes like someone wrung out a dirty sock into a glass. You're not doing anything special. You're just sitting there, existing. Which, honestly, in the 1880s, is already an achievement. And then some guy stands up across the room, points at you and goes, "Him, he should be sheriff." And before you can even put your glass down, the whole room is nodding. The mayor's shaking your hand. Someone fired a gun into the ceiling. A dog is barking outside. A drunk man in the corner is crying, and nobody knows why. And just like that, you're the sheriff. No interview, no application, no training, no nothing. Just a room full of people who decided that you were the least dangerous option available, and a shiny little badge that is about to make you simultaneously the most powerful and most hated man in the entire county. And I want to be very specific here. The county, not the town. The whole county, which, out west, could be bigger than some European countries. Your jurisdiction is not a few streets and a saloon. It's hundreds of square miles of desert, mountain, and open nothing, and every single inch of it is your problem now. So the next morning you wake up, you pin on the badge, and you think, okay, this is fine. I'm the law now. I've got authority. Things are going to be different. And then someone knocks on your door to tell you that a pig has wandered into the neighbor's garden and you need to come sort it out. That's your first case, a pig. See, nobody told you that being sheriff doesn't just mean catching outlaws. It means catching everything. You're the tax collector. You're the process server. You're the man who rides out to deliver legal documents to people who do not want legal documents delivered to them. You're the judge when there's no judge. You're the undertaker when somebody dies with no family.
You are essentially the entire government of a territory the size of a small country. Every single department rolled into one man on one horse with one increasingly tired face. Now, let's talk about the money, because this is where it gets interesting. Here's what most people don't know. A county sheriff in the 1880s was very often not the struggling, starving public servant you might be imagining. Thanks to something called the fee system, a smart sheriff could actually make out quite well. For every tax dollar you collected, you kept a cut. For every mile you rode serving a warrant, you billed the county. For every arrest, every legal document delivered, every court appearance, there was a fee attached. And that money went directly into your pocket. Which sounds great, right? Finally, something that sounds like a good deal. Except here's what that actually turns you into. You are now financially incentivized to arrest as many people as possible, collect as many taxes as possible, ride as many miles as possible, and file as much paperwork as possible. Not because justice demands it, but because your mortgage demands it. You're not really a lawman anymore. You're a walking tax office with a gun and a grudge. You're a bounty hunter in a nicer hat. Every criminal you bring in isn't just a menace off the streets. He's a line item on your monthly invoice. Some sheriffs got genuinely wealthy off this system, which is great for them, and absolutely terrible for their reputation with every single person who lived and worked in their county. Because nothing makes a town love their sheriff like watching him ride up, collect fees, pocket his cut, and ride back out to bill the county for the mileage. Now, you do have a deputy, technically. His name is something like Earl. And Earl has exactly two qualifications for this job. The first is that he owned the second fastest horse in the county, which you discovered during a race you organized mostly to find out. The second qualification is that he once beat 3 men in a row at cards without cheating. That one's never been confirmed, but Earl tells the story with real conviction, and at this point, you've stopped asking follow-up questions. Earl shows up to work every morning in one of two states, half drunk or fully drunk. And the difference between the two is mostly just how loud he is. On a good day, Earl can reload a rifle and only drop the bullets twice. On a bad day, Earl is the reason there is a new hole in the ceiling. On his worst day, which happened on a Thursday, nobody talks about Thursday, Earl somehow managed to arrest himself and spent 4 hours in the jail cell before anyone noticed. But he's what you've got. It's you and Earl against everything. So let's talk about the outlaws. Because they're out there, and they know where your office is. And these aren't just like 1 or 2 guys causing trouble. In the 1870s and 80s, the outlaw problem in the American West was, it was a lot. The James Younger gang had over a dozen members operating across multiple states. The cowboys down in Tombstone were basically a full organized crime operation with cattle. And you and Earl are out here with bad guns, a fee-based billing system, and a jail cell that a motivated goat could escape from. There's no backup, no telegraph to the next county saying, "Hey, send help." No database of criminals, no forensics. If a man robs your bank, changes his hat, and rides 2 towns over, he is, legally and practically speaking, a completely new person. The most advanced investigative tool you have available is going back to the saloon, buying a round of drinks, showing people a wanted poster sketch that somehow makes every man look vaguely like Abraham Lincoln, and asking if anyone recognizes this guy. That's the investigation. That's the whole thing. And if nobody talks, and a lot of times nobody talks, you ride out alone. Into the desert, into the mountains, into places where the only other living things are rattlesnakes and men who have been specifically informed that there's a reward for your body. And you ride out knowing that if something goes wrong out there, if your horse breaks a leg, if you take a bullet, if you fall down a ravine, nobody is coming for you. You will simply become a very quiet entry in a county record that nobody will ever read. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just the outlaws you have to worry about, it's the man who hired you. See, let's be honest about something. That election night in the saloon, where the whole room pointed at you and said him. Do you want to know who bought the drinks that night? Do you want to know who'd spent the 2 weeks before whispering the right names into the right ears? The big rancher, the richest man in the county, the man who owns more land than some small nations and who has very specific ideas about how that land, and the people on it, should be managed. He didn't give you that badge out of civic goodness. He gave you that badge because you are now, functionally, his badge. A legal instrument, a government license protector of his specific interests, dressed up in the language of justice. And so, when rustlers are stealing from the small farmers on the east side of the county, that's your full and immediate attention. But when questions start circling about how the rancher's herd doubled in size last year without a single new purchase on record, well, that's a bookkeeping matter, isn't it? Probably nothing. You've got a pig situation on the other side of town. The saloon owner wants rowdy Friday nights to stay rowdy because that's how he pays his bills. The local businessman wants squatters gone from land he may or may not legally own. Every powerful man in the county has a line item in his budget where you are supposed to fit. And every arrest you make, every arrest you don't, every crime that gets investigated, and every crime that quietly disappears, it's all being watched and filed away. Because in 2 years, there's another election, and that same room full of people, with those same bought drinks, will decide whether you keep the badge or go back to shoveling something. Some sheriffs leaned into this completely. They took the rancher's guidance, they protected the right interests, they arrested the people who didn't have anyone powerful to protect them. And they did fine. They kept the job, they kept eating regular meals. But if you actually decided to do this job with full, honest integrity, to follow the evidence wherever it went, even if it went somewhere expensive, the rancher funds your opponent in the next election. The saloon owner stops feeding you information. The businessman tells his friends you're difficult. And suddenly, you are the most principled, unemployed man in the entire territory, standing in the street with your badge and your integrity and absolutely nothing else. The badge was never really the law. It was just the law's costume, worn by whoever the county's most powerful men decided to dress up that year. All right, so let's say you've got a real outlaw, an actual wanted man, not a pig, not a property dispute, and you go get him. You ride out for days sometimes, through heat that dries the spit in your mouth, through cold that makes your fingers stop working. You're eating jerky that has the texture of old boot leather and beans from a can that may or may not have been bad when you bought it. You're sleeping on the ground, or in a barn if someone takes pity on you, or once, and this genuinely happened to more than one lawman out here, inside a dead horse during a blizzard because it was the only warm thing for 20 miles. And eventually, you catch up to him. And there's a confrontation. And here's what nobody tells you about gunfights in the Wild West. They are nothing like the movies. There is no elegant, slow walk down a dusty street. It's chaos. Pure, panicked chaos. Men shooting from behind barrels, from windows, from horses that are losing their minds. You're firing a single-action revolver you have to manually cock before every single shot, in the dust and noise and movement, at a target who is also moving, while also trying not to get shot yourself. And the guns jam, constantly. You could be standing 10 feet from a man and miss him clean because the bullet decided today was not its day. It happened. It happened embarrassingly often to men whose whole reputation was built on not missing. But let's say you win. You get the guy. You ride back into town feeling like something close to a hero. You put him in the jail cell. The lock breaks by morning. Now let's say somewhere in all of this, you get shot, which you will, multiple times over a long enough career, and you limp back to the doctor. And I want to be very precise about what a frontier doctor in the 1880s actually is. This is not the man you're imagining. There is no anesthesia. There is no consistent germ theory being applied. This man's primary qualifications are a steady hand, a passionate interest in knives, and a level of confidence that should frighten you considerably. He's going to give you a piece of leather to bite down on, pour whiskey on the wound, and then drink the rest of the bottle himself, because you're not the only one who needs to get through this, and then dig around inside your shoulder with an instrument that was last cleaned sometime before your second robbery. You wake up. It hurts. Your shoulder is going to ache every time it rains for the rest of your life. Your left leg is going to click when you walk from here on out. You put the badge back on. You go back to work. And here's the part that really gets me. Sometimes the man you're hunting is someone you know. Someone you used to drink with in that exact saloon where they handed you this badge in the first place. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid knew each other personally. They played cards together. And then one day, Garrett's the sheriff and Billy's the outlaw, and Garrett rides out and shoots him in the dark. You know what that does to a man? Knowing that the job might someday ask you to put a bullet in someone whose mother brings you pie on Sundays. And you eat that pie. You smile and say thank you and ask about her garden, because what else are you going to do? This job makes you the hero in some stories and the villain in others. And the truth is usually just a man standing in the middle of a muddy street, employed by a rancher he can't investigate, hunting men he grew up with, getting paid by the mile, trying to do something that's basically impossible in a place that mostly just wants to be left alone. So, eventually, the years pass, the knees go, the shooting hand shakes on cold mornings. The fee system dries up as the territory gets more civilized and starts asking uncomfortable questions about where all that money went. The town elects someone younger, someone meaner, someone who still has both their original teeth and fresher ideas about which rancher to work for. They give you a small cash settlement and a letter of thanks on paper that's already starting to yellow at the edges. And you sit on the porch of a house you barely own, and you count your scars, and you think about all the men you caught, and all the men you didn't, and all those hundreds of miles of empty county you crossed alone, billing per mile, on the promise that order was worth something in a place that mostly just wanted to be left alone. And you hear, through the grapevine, that the outlaw you spent 3 years hunting, the one who escaped your jail cell twice, who shot you in the shoulder outside of Dodge, who made your life specifically and personally miserable for the better part of a decade. He opened a bakery in Kansas. He's doing great. People say his muffins are incredible. Being a sheriff in the Wild West wasn't justice. It wasn't glory. It was just one more way the frontier found to completely use a man up. Badge, principles, and all. And then forget his name before the headstone even dried. But hey, still better than farming.